It's just fantastic. Captain's Log, Subdate 210615.2. We have subjected all 100% proven sex offenders to a new form of conversion therapy. This therapy involves a full neuralization along with castration, which takes place post-neuralization and without anesthesia to save money. Welcome everyone to the Halls of Injustice. Today we have 2 inmates and a story that takes place in 2019. We have inmates numbers 077.1 and 077.2, Zakariya Osman and Harris Saqib, Kib, S-A-Q-I-B. By all means correct me. However, since they're in the ISO cubes now, they are inmates 077.1 and 077.2. They don't get the pleasure, privilege or honor, or even the inkling of respect required to be given a name that isn't a number. Their victim for the rest of this video shall be known as John Doe, as he has retained the right to anonymity for life for good reason. John Doe was a student in October of 2019 at Leeds University. He was in fact at the time a fresher. It was his first month there before everything went Pete Tong. So on October the 16th, 2019, John Doe went out with his friends night clubbing, or is it just called clubbing? Drinking, debauchery, fraternizing with subordinates, doesn't matter. He went out, and he went out with friends. On October 17th at around 3 AM, John Doe had become separated from his friends. And this is the part where Zakariya Osman and Harris Saqib, along with one other person whose name is not mentioned, are introduced into this story. Zakariya Osman and Harris Saqib were actually in a car not so far away with a friend, and upon seeing John Doe on his own, they managed to lure him to their vehicle. Not sure how they did it. I'm sure threats were used. Numbers were against John Doe after all. What happened next was, upon getting him into the car, they then took him to cash machines, where he incorrectly entered his PIN number and they punched him repeatedly for doing so. They then put him on the phone with his bank because there's something they wanted, because they scouted their prey apparently, something which we'll get to in a moment. He rang his bank after he was ordered to transfer around £10,000 from his savings account, current account and an ISA, because he managed to show them what was in his account via his phone. Because such a large amount was requested though, the bank took their time, and it is in fact a slow process, so many questions were asked, not helped in the slightest by the fact that John Doe was incredibly nervous, because there was more to this, a lot more in fact. So John Doe did his best to persuade the bank of the legitimacy of the transfers for the money that went into Harris Saqib's account. £4,810 to be exact was transferred into Harris's account. When that was done though, the bank stopped further sums from being transferred. They weren't convinced and they felt that this was iffy. I'm sure if given a chance they would have called shenanigans. What happened next though, over a period of 22 hours, was John Doe was subjected to quite nasty torture. While in the back of that car, he had cigarettes stubbed on him by Harris Saqib and Zakariya Osman. They continued to punch him, forced him to smoke cannabis, shoved unknown pills into his mouth and made him swallow them with vodka. The more violent of the two is nicknamed Django. Can you guess of these two which one it is? Yeah, colour me surprised. During this whole ordeal, one of the threats used by inmate 077.1 aka Zakariya Osman was that if John Doe did not do as he was told, inmate 077.1 would take this to an M, which at the time led John Doe into believing that he was going to be murdered unless he did what he was told. Inmate 077.1 and inmate 077.2 both told John Doe that they knew where he lived and would find him if he reported the kidnapping. I'm glad they refer to the crime as such. It's so much easier to talk about, along with the torture part and extortion. 22 hours later, John Doe was permitted to leave the car, but he was not allowed to leave the car with any money or his mobile phone at around 1 AM on October the 18th, 2019. John Doe then went to hospital to receive treatment for burns and bruises to his face. It was then that the police were alerted to this, but obviously that was a little tricky for him. He wasn't allowed to report it, but I'll be honest, he was safe at that point, so he was right to do what he did next. And understandably, because those criminals were absolute geniuses, they made a minor error, which made it easy to identify them. It was the fact that, as earlier stated, the money went straight into Harris Saqib's account. So they simply contacted the bank and traced the money. These criminals are really high IQ, as you can tell. As a direct consequence for the experience that John Doe went through, he has been left permanently scarred from the injuries. He left university and Leeds despite attempting to carry on as normal, finding that the stress and the pressure of being in Leeds and his studies to be overwhelming, and for that I'm genuinely truly sorry for that. I hope you are able to go to university somewhere, get the education you deserve, and succeed in life in a way that these two pricks never will. When this went to trial, both entered a plea, i.e. inmate 077.1 and inmate 077.2. Their plea was guilty, which makes this really easy. It's also worth adding that Zakariya Osman, 077.1, also pled guilty to 2 further offences of robbery, which all makes this quite a simple cut and shut case, doesn't it? Don't worry, I'm not about to throw a swerve in, I promise. It actually is a remarkably simple one to close. Because now we can go straight from verdict without having to touch it. They've already said they're guilty. We're golden. Let's go to the sentence. I can't wait to shove you two in ISO cubes. Zakariya Osman, aka inmate 077.1, was sentenced to 30 years in prison for robbery and kidnap, along with the additional charges, with him having to serve a minimum of 25 years in prison before being eligible for parole. And Harris Saqib, guilty of robbery and kidnap, was sentenced to 20 years in prison with a minimum of 17.5 years having to be served before being eligible for parole. Judge Bayliss, upon giving this verdict and sentence, said, "All robberies are serious, but the robbery and kidnap of the student is a chilling crime. It was committed against a young man whose life had been changed by your actions. Changed to an extent that his university degree course has had to be abandoned. Changed to the extent that he will never be able to walk the streets with any confidence anymore. What he went through was unimaginable. You caused serious physical and psychological harm to your victim." I think today's a strange day. It's one of the rarest moments where a verdict is actually okay for me. I agree with this sentence. Of course, I would say 30 years, then you can leave, 20 years, then you can leave. But in truth, these are harsh sentences. And I'm okay with that. I'm here for that. You two motherfuckers can get in your fucking cells. Just to give a little scope before we finish on the subject of Osman's previous 2 offences added to this. He was involved in an attack on a man who he stabbed 5 times in the stomach as he robbed him of cash in Huddersfield in February 2019, and in a further robbery in Bradford on July 2019, in which he threatened his victim in a car, telling the man, "I'm going to shank you right here if you do not give me everything you have got." He then stabbed that man 3 times and punched him in the head. Perhaps that 30-year sentence should be 30 years. Golden. Now, as we're done, I'd like to know what you all think about this. Please do let me know in the comments down below. Drive up my engagement by smashing the like. As a final thing, I shall be playing Murder Fun Time or Fishing on Twitch tonight. If I don't see you there because I haven't decided which one it is, I hope you all have a fantastic day and thank you all very much, except for these 2 dickheads, for listening.